I regret to inform you that I have once again been triggered by these smug midwits who call themselves the new atheists. At first it was our friend Sam Harris, and now I'm afraid it's Mr. Dawkins' turn. Mr. Dawkins did an interview with CNN around a decade ago called Creationists Know Nothing. He says one of the main reasons why people are religious is because they are persuaded by the apparent design of living things, and that's completely destroyed by Darwin. And he says the lack of design is as certain as the fact that the Earth and the other planets orbit the Sun. However, NeoDarwinism is based on a weak and superficial understanding of causality, and is therefore incomplete. This is not a religious argument, but a scientific, mathematical, and metaphysical argument against NeoDarwinism, among its most prominent proponents being Richard Dawkins. In this video, I propose to attempt to answer the question which necessarily precedes any discussion of natural selection. Namely, why are there sexually reproducing species with various utility functions they optimize for in the first place? And show why in order to explain this phenomenon, we must merge Neo-Darwinism with a deeper understanding of biological causality, which meaningfully incorporates the concept of teleology, that it's not random selection, but purposeful and generative selection across time which is responsible for biological complexity. I was talking with an evolutionary biologist a few months back who completely agreed with me with respect to the absurdity of positing a model of biological evolution based on random mutation and random selection. And he explained to me, because this is a nuance I missed in my first video, that evolution does what it does because of competition. That's the why, because they're a collection of different animals competing for the same resources, and therefore have to stay in a biological arms race, so to speak. It's like the Red Queen in Alice in Wonderland. As a species, you have to run as fast as you can, just to stay in the same place. The species which survive are instances of specified complexity, meaning its pattern or form is unlikely to occur by chance variation and can be described in a short and concise way, which means nature has selected specific and complex outcomes on the basis of fitness. According to Michael Levin, evolution ranks organisms by competence. Bobby Azarian says evolution is optimizing the thermodynamic cost of computation, minimizing planetary free energy, and maximizing predictive information encoded in the biosphere. Stuart Sims theorizes that evolution is the autopoietic telic exploration of worldial space, of the various configurations which can be taken in a probabilistic space of biological mutation to parse through the information encoded in the universe. Regardless of what you think of these individual theories, I personally think are all true in some respect, it remains to be explained in Neo-Darwinism, or by Dawkins in particular, why the recursion between organism and the environment leads to anything representing order or complexity. In other words, why is it that the environment and the organism are structured in such a way as to evolve in coupling, if they were not the manifestation of the same causal process which wills both organism and environment into existence? Chris Langan describes Neo-Darwinism as a marriage of convenience between post-Mendelian genetics, which is essentially the notion that the structure and evolution of individual organisms is encoded in DNA, which is inherited by their ancestors and the species at large, and natural selection. Dawkins himself describes this as non-random survival of randomly generated codes. Mathematician David Berlinski writes, "We quite know what DNA is. It is a macromolecule and so a material object. We quite know what it achieves, apparently everything. Are these two sides of this equation in balance? No, they are not, Mr. Berlinski." Let's introduce the concept of contingency using a simple example, the contingency of a 4-digit lottery. The contingency of a 4-digit lottery is a set of all possible drawings over unlimited trials. In other words, it's the total number of different 4-digit numbers that can be drawn. The number of possible drawings is 10 to the 4, or 10,000. That is because there are 10 possible digits, 0 through 9, that can be drawn for each of the 4 digits. DNA is genetic code. What we're finding out every year is that the cell is more complicated than we had previously thought. It stores energy, has metabolism, etc. So even the likelihood of a cell coming into existence from a pre-existing store of chemicals is spectacularly unlikely. But if we were to try to estimate the contingency of biological evolution, we would need a number of steps. First, the contingency of genes converted into proteins, which fold into functional forms and interact with other molecules to alter the timing of gene expression, which can lead to cytodifferentiation, pattern formation, morphogenesis, and so on. The likelihood of random processes leading to single-celled organisms, never mind single-celled organisms which reproduce, never mind single-celled organisms which mutate and produce utile variations, never mind a natural process which selects for complexity over time, leading to billions of beings with 30 to 37 trillion cells in a single unity with consciousness, memory, a sense of self, self-synthesized organ systems, which all work together in harmony, along with the proliferation of billions of species across eons, which all evolve in coupling with their natural environments. I'm going to make a positive claim here. The probability of that is not almost zero. It's not epsilon, it's not 2 times 10 to the negative 16. It is so close to zero that we don't have a probability to express it. But let's say it was epsilon, an arbitrarily small number, which we'll choose as 2 times 10 to the negative 16, which is the value in JavaScript. This means the contingency of biological complexity we observe on Earth's surface is 20 million billions, a substantial underestimate, mind you. From a purely probabilistic standpoint, if it is even possible that nature was designed and created by the application of intelligence and design, this is more likely by several orders of magnitude than that it evolved by random and careless mutation. As the modal ontological argument shows, if it is even possible, then it must be so. Darwinism holds that every supposedly universal law of nature is irrefutable evidence that natural events unfold independently of intent. But why are there even predictable laws under a materialist atheistic paradigm, which explicitly holds that the universe evolved for no reason? Where do these laws of causality, heredity, mutation, even physics itself come from? And where specifically do they reside? Further, why is there this thing as opposed to everything, as opposed to every possible thing that could be? What is the basis whereby nature can select one outcome rather than the whole thereof? This leads us to the second problem with Darwinism, the connectivity problem, namely, what connects cause and effect? St. Thomas Aquinas proved this definitively with his way of the first mover. It distinguishes between act and potency, something which exists actually and something which could potentially exist but doesn't. Anything which comes into existence, let's say a unicorn were to evolve over time because it was more utile for horses to have horns and shit fruit salad, for some reason or another. It must move from a potential to an actuality, and something must have caused it to do so, namely the evolutionary advantage it would gain by this mutation. That thing which causes a potential to become actual must already be an actuality. It's called a telon in the CTMU. At the scale of cosmic and biological evolution, telons are non-terminal beings, or forms, which can structure events and evolution so as to bring about some utility. And yet these cannot will themselves into existence. They are the function of tellers. Secondary tellers, such as human beings and creatures with significant self-modeling capacity, are thus able to determine their own goals and drives, a series of directed aims seeking to fulfill themselves in the form of telons. The telons of these individual beings determine what will happen in their lives, what choices they make, how that affects the world, etc. The primary teller runs a reality self-simulation and takes all of the telons, everything which is utile to his self-identification, which stratifies through the global, agentive, and subordinate levels, so he's trying to maximize the proliferation of life and consciousness in the universe. These telons have to have an ultimate source, and that is God. Further, as Aristotle shows in his Metaphysics, nothing greater can be the consequence of the lesser. We see intelligent designers in nature. Beavers can build dams, humans can build skyscrapers and reservoirs. Thusly, a greater cause must be the cause of all the specified complexity, a greater intelligence. The entirety of reality, in fact, must be imbued with intelligence, creativity, design, teleology, etc., in order for this to emerge. Darwinism omits the generative, pre-selective phase of the explanation for what we observe in evolutionary biology. It misses the point entirely. It's based on the essentially trivial observation that nature imposes constraints on survival and reproduction. It weeds the garden well enough, but is helpless to grow a single flower. Nature is both that which selects and that which is selected. As Langen says, the intrinsic utility criterion of self-selection implies that nature, as rationally defined in the CTMU, possesses a generalized form of intelligence by which all levels of evolution are driven and directed. Isaiah 46:10 says, I make known from the end to the beginning, from ancient times what is still to come. I say, my purpose will stand, and I will do all that I please. Come back to God, Mr. Dawkins. Let the light shine forth in the darkness. May the peace of our Father in heaven be upon you. Like and subscribe. Peace.